Welcome to the Audrey Hall Show. You know, it seems there are so many opinions floating around at any given time about what should and shouldn't be done to make downtown Framingham a destination and an economic hub in the city. Well, a nonprofit organization called Downtown Framingham Inc. was founded just over 10 years ago to help the downtown Framingham business and residential community thrive. Reyad Shah is my guest today, and he's a Framingham resident who was hired as the executive director of Downtown Framingham Inc. in January of 2023. Reyad also worked for the Boys and Girls Club with young children and in the Framingham Public Schools as well. So thank you so much for making your debut appearance here on the Audrey Hall Show today. Did I capture all you want to share in the intro, or would you like to add to that?
No, I think you captured me pretty well, and thank you for having me. First off, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. And no, I think you captured it perfectly. Worked with young kids. I've worked at the school, born and raised in Framingham, currently a Framingham resident, and now I'm currently the executive director for Downtown Framingham Inc.
Those are all really important things that give a good picture of someone who grew up here and is now working to help improve the community that you grew up in. It's really helpful to know all of that. And about 6 months into the job, I think it's appropriate to maybe take a look back and ask you at this time, what are the priorities and the goals that you set at the very beginning, for Downtown Framingham Inc. in your role?
So I think as I look back, as my role has progressed since I got hired in January, I look at it as really building relationships with the businesses and the residents and the organizations downtown that are providing a staple either product or service for the downtown community and the larger Framingham community as well. It's not just Framingham residents that frequent downtown Framingham, but there's probably more than most patrons that are downtown Framingham residents that do frequent the area. So really hearing from the business owners what they need for support, whether that's outdoor seating, whether that's helping with their Facebook or their Instagram social pages, and the residents helping them know where to park and where there's opportunities to walk downtown when the meter spots are filled up.
Exactly. And, having a focus on the downtown makes a difference. If there's someone who's kind of bringing everyone together, to cohesively address some of the needs and interests of the downtown, then things happen more consistently and more progressively, I think, with that focus. And so with some of those goals in mind, I guess the other thing to ask at this point is, number one, how are you funded? Is the organization long-term? It's been there for quite some time, and I think there was some federal funds at the very beginning. And do you see that continuing?
Yeah, I do see it continuing and us being here for quite some time. And then therefore after my tenure, after so many years after that down the road, we're funded through CDBG, Community Development Block Grant, funding through the City of Framingham. And then additionally, we write supporting grants and ask for federal money and or state level money in various forms, whether that's in a grant, it's an earmark letter, working with partners to try to partner and bring in additional funding to provide services for the community.
So when you're working closely with the residents and the businesses downtown, and you mentioned a few of the things that they're interested in, some of the needs that they have, does that also involve working with the city administration at all?
It does. It really means working with them side by side on a daily basis. For a business to get outdoor seating, I need to work with the inspectional and planning board to ensure that they're meeting the requirements of the sidewalk and allowing pedestrian walkability downtown as we build up the community and culture of accessing downtown as a walkable location. We want to make sure that there is that space for pedestrians to get down there. So I do have to go into City Hall a number of times, whether it's 2 or 3 times a day to multiple times a week, but it is very, very imperative that I do work with city departments.
Now, so do you feel that the goals that Downtown Framingham Inc. has are in sync with what the goals the administration has for the downtown?
I do. I think we're side by side, we want to see the downtown area thrive and see it as a destination location rather than a pass-by for other outside communities. Mm-hmm. And working with them, it's allowed me to hear their vision and shared vision as I speak on top of what I think are my priorities or goals going forward throughout the years to come, and hearing what their ideas and what they already kind of have in the pipeline going forward as I come into this role in January. And it's really, really exciting stuff.
Yeah, now you just mentioned as an example outdoor seating, obviously for restaurants, which started during the pandemic, and now it's been declared over, so to speak. But outside seating became something that people really enjoyed. It had its issues in terms of accessibility. It had its issues in terms of traffic and car movement, the flow of traffic, et cetera. How is that going to work now going forward for downtown? Is there going to be a fee? Is there not going to be a fee? Are all restaurants going to be able to have outdoor seating? What do you see?
So working with the city and seeing that they do want to support these businesses and allow outdoor seating. And it's more of making sure that the patrons sitting at those seats are safe while there is traffic flowing through the downtown area. So working with DPW to make sure that if there are barriers, are they suitable to be there to provide a safe barrier between the traffic and the patrons that are sitting at those restaurants? And then also how much of, again, does that allow for walkability on the sidewalk? So making sure we do measurements, we do walkthroughs, and not just buying equipment or tables and chairs and placing it out there. Again, from the small businesses, buying that may hurt them in the long run because they didn't have the know-how beforehand to work with those city departments.
Well, nowadays there's so many crazy things going on. You hear about cars kind of plowing into people that are sitting outside. There have been several cases of that happening, some intentional, some not intentional. Does that go into the thought process when you're working with the city to plan for all this outdoor seating, when you say keeping the patrons safe?
It does. And we look at various options for those barriers. One being how durable they are, how strong they are, what the material are they built out of, and obviously the aesthetic as well, because we do want to keep up the aesthetics of downtown as it's continuing to become beautiful each and every day. We want to make sure that we are working on the safety, but also the aesthetic of it as well.
Now, you said as it's continuing to become beautiful each and every day. And I think I mentioned earlier, you might have, when we just started talking, that everyone has their own opinion about what downtown Framingham needs. There have been so many improvements that I think makes it look very beautiful, but yet some people feel like some of those improvements shouldn't be there because they are exploited by people when they're hanging out on the benches or when they're, laying on the benches, et cetera. How are you dealing with that and making downtown more beautiful, but yet kind of balancing how people use those facilities versus how they contribute to the aesthetics?
When people ask me about how and is it safe and what's going on with folks that are sitting outside using the facilities or what have you inappropriately or appropriately in that space, and I would say, like some of these human beings, they need services, and we need to support these services that are in town to help connect the folks in need to those services. Now, I can't say that I can go to somebody and ask them to come with me to one of the services and they're going to get right up and go.
Right.
But if we keep frequenting those spaces, if there becomes more walkability, if people are constantly out there asking them to go to services and being on top of it, maybe you catch these folks on a great day that they are ready to use some of those services, because there are a lot of service providers downtown in and around the city and locally around in other communities, right? And so there are access points that we can help connect. I can help connect to those providers, to these human beings outside that do need the services. And when people say, like, oh, well, I don't want to drive downtown, so I drive the other 20 minutes around the street. And then I ask them the same question is, well, do you make that same adjustment when you drive through downtown Boston? And I know they're two different places, but I think that's where we would love to see Framingham become, right? And part of that is asking folks and trying to change the narrative of saying, like, hey, we see these folks and let's not forget about they are human beings and they do need the services, but we do need to help get them the services they need into a space that is suitable for them to access it.
So you said it's important to work with the agencies and the organizations that provide those services, and you've emphasized human beings, obviously, for good reason. for compassion and understanding and empathy. How are these partnerships with the service providers working? They've been here, and these organizations and service providers have been here for a long, long time. Some of the sentiment you hear is that people feel like we have more of these issues than other communities do. So it's disproportionate. And so the relationships, are they getting stronger? Are the services more prevalent? Are they more available? Is it a draw? Does it make things worse? What are some of your thoughts about that?
I don't think it's negative. I think it's great. I think that there's plenty of service providers, and yes, they've been around for a while. But just like everybody else currently coming out of the pandemic and still working through it, is they're struggling for staff, and
everyone's struggling for staff.
And everyone's struggling for staff. So I'm trying to work with the universities and think about how can we use the, hopefully when it's rebuilt, Mass Bay building that will be reopening later coming soon.
Which is specialized in human health and human services.
So then how do we create a sustainable intern co-op program to outreach to these service providers to connect these young professionals to professional job experiences so that when they do graduate with an associate's degree, they can go right into the professional workspace and they've had that experience that they're looking for so they can hit their career running. And then that keeps that economic vitality of keeping young professionals in Framingham and supporting local organizations,
yes,
the human beings, and the restaurants and businesses that
yes,
make up the area itself.
You know, David Podell, who's president of Mass Bay, he's been here on the show talking very enthusiastically about the new campus, about the pipeline to jobs, about the partnership with Framingham State and Keefe Tech, maybe even Framingham High School, you know, for that pipeline of jobs in health, human services, to help really fill a lot of the vacancies right now that are making services more difficult for people to access. And obviously that impacts everyone. It impacts everything. So I think what I'm hearing you say is more collaboration, you know, to accomplish that.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I'm a Mass Bay alum. And
congratulations.
Mass Bay allowed me to get a student internship at Blocks, where I did my student teaching, which then allowed me to then work for the Framingham Public School System, which I did work for about 8 to 9 years, right? So I've been through that experiential learning.
You're a perfect example of what we're talking about.
And it's kept me into the city, which allowed me to grow my professional career and has allowed me to continue to look in Framingham because it's really built me and shaped me who I am as a young person to growing my professional career to now as I seek to build a family and continue my professional career. And that's something I want to be able to give back to Mass Bay, is they provided me such a sustainable pathway for future career access that I want to be able to do that for somebody else. And if I can do that for one individual, I think that's amazing, right? And then if we can build upon that to create something for Dr. Podell and his team over there at Mass Bay to sustain through years to come, even better.
Your firsthand experience growing up here and, as you said, you know, getting your degree from Mass Bay and then going into the schools and student teaching, et cetera, is a perfect example. I'm so glad that you shared that. It really demonstrates to people how the investment in these resources in the community is a long-term investment and has an impact on the future of the community in a positive way. So thank you so much for sharing that. How do you think in your role that you measure the success of Downtown Framingham Inc? What is success to you?
So it's a great question because when people say, "Oh, well, how's work going?" and asking me, you know, like, "What have you done today?" and I don't have a tangible something to pass to you and say, "Hey, look what I did today," right? Versus, well, I measure it as success as the business owners knowing who I am and the city departments knowing who I am and the businesses getting their issues fixed with the help of me with the city departments. Recently, we've had an issue on at Union Ave where there was there's a traffic signal and people were just honking on their horn, and they weren't turning right, and it was causing issues for some of the businesses to speak on the phone because they were either working or even having customers come in. And so we did a walking, I was able to bring some of the staff from City Hall and city councilors, and we did a walking tour of some of the businesses. And as we were doing it, there was honking going on. And so we brought that to their attention and brought that to DPW, and we worked with them to showcase, hey, this is a real need of the business community downtown, of how they're getting access, how they're interacting with their customers.
How was it addressed? Was it resolved?
It was resolved. And
What
now,
happened?
and so city councilors were able to work with DPW, and they were able to do some studies of other access points around Framingham that has a similar traffic light and a similar signage. And then so they were able to adopt that downtown, and I've followed up with those business owners since it's been installed, and they said 90% it's been so much better.
So you advocated for the businesses, that you collaborated with the administration and the electeds, and you got a result. There's a success.
There's a success, and that's a measurable, right? And so one measurable over the course of, say, a month and a half timeline, but I think, that's a huge success for that business to feel like, wow, they don't have to tell their customers.
Right. Well, and I'm sure it's not like you have one thing going on and nothing else at the same time.
Correct.
Until
Yeah.
you finish that.
There's a lot of other things going on, but I say, like, as those successes build up and we do things and collaborate with the city and businesses, that is one, like, untangible success that I can say. And then a tangible, measurable outcome would have been the Marathon Fest that we had at Jack's Abbey on Marathon Day. And we were able to create a community event for residents, community spectators to come and add a flair to what they already come down to the 135 area. The road's blocked off. Everyone comes down. It's a world-class race of all abilities, capabilities, and languages. So we wanted to just add some excitement to what is already celebrated in the downtown area. So we were able to get local organizations, vendors, exhibitors to come on and host an event in the Jack's Abbey parking lot. Family-friendly, so the alcohol did stay inside the beer hall. People of age could most certainly go inside and enjoy an adult beverage of their choice, but outside was family-friendly, accessible activities.
Great. I'm looking forward to, just keeping an eye on all the special programs like that you have going on in the initiatives. There have been so many over the years. And I think downtown, has definitely seen a lot more attention that it needs over the years and has benefited from that. Question for you. There's a lot more residents downtown now than there ever have been, because obviously many more apartment buildings have come in. The zoning was changed to be built to be more dense around mass transit, being the train station that goes in and out of Boston. So I'm curious from your perspective, and in speaking to the businesses, is having a lot of residents downtown important to the businesses?
It is, because they have direct walkability to those businesses. So they feel like, as residents know who they are and connect with them on a more granular level, they're going to be able to have those long-term customers that are new additions, that are moving in from different spaces, that hopefully can build their families, build their livelihood here in Framingham. And I've connected with some of those residents in some of those buildings, just walking outside, being on the streets, stopping them and asking them, hey, do you need directions to the new cafe that just opened up down the street if you didn't know about it, and kind of just opening the door to be like, hey, what are you talking about? Let me see. And so now, as I frequent the streets, I do see some of those same residents who I've talked to go into some of these shops now, and they are now regulars in there, which is nice. And I think it's a really nice added bonus for the businesses to get a targeted demographic of potential patrons for their business.
And they need a certain amount of foot traffic, or because you mentioned earlier you wanted downtown to be more of a destination than a pass-through. And obviously, if you're living downtown, it's not a pass-through. You're there.
Correct.
So there's the foot traffic to the businesses as well. But yet, when developers come in and they say, we're going to build another apartment complex, and then there's like an uproar, oh God, more apartments. Is that valid? Is that a valid concern for downtown? Is there a limit? Is it saturated? When is enough enough? Should there be more? What are people saying? What are the residents saying? What are the businesses saying about apartment development in downtown?
I think it's mixed. You have folks that really, really like it because it's adding more economic vitality to the city. There's more people living in it, so therefore their patronage and customer foot traffic will increase. Other folks might say it's going to increase traffic, and there's already enough traffic, and we can't add more cars to the road than what we have. And for me, I see it as a benefit. If they're allowing to have affordable housing and they are providing that as equitable as possible, and the businesses feel like they will benefit from those new residents and foot traffic, I see it as a real plus for the city itself. And, it comes in with having more construction and more road closures or more time behind a tractor trailer or something like that. But I think seeing the future of it and knowing what that can do for the city as a whole, I think is very, very impactful and powerful.
And what is the residential occupancy rate downtown? Do you feel that most of the buildings that have been constructed for new apartments are full? Are they half vacant? What are you seeing?
They're definitely not 100% full, but they're definitely more than over half vacancy. Directly downtown at Alta Union, I believe the last time I spoke with them, they're around upwards of 75-80% of occupancy. And I believe Bancroft is just about full, and Modera is closely approaching getting up there. And part of it is, I think it's new. People have to get Framingham is still a new city, so living in a high-rise or mixed-use building is still a little bit different in a space where, if you go into Boston or New York or some of the larger cities that have been cities for quite some time, it seems normal to live in high rises, and there'd be a lot of it, and there's a lot of foot traffic. And I think as the city progresses and it grows and it gets beautified and zoning and all that stuff, and the city continues to work with the residents and businesses, I see it as being, as a real bonus for the city, is having those apartment buildings being full and lively.
And is the train station making a difference in terms of bringing people into those apartments? Does the train station itself need some work? What are your thoughts about that?
I have seen a higher uptick in people running across the street to catch the morning train from some of the apartment buildings and stuff like that. So it is driving people to the area, right? And we want to drive the young professionals and maybe families that are looking to relocate out of the city or just different areas, and they're maybe not ready to go into a house, but they're looking for the next stop on their chapter of life. And I think that these new buildings provide access and opportunity for a lot of that. And again, being close to the train station, it allows access points to Boston and Worcester very frequently. And I think, does the train station need some paint and some stuff like that? But it's very clean. It's upkept pretty well with the flowers and just the trash collection and everything like that. I walk by there almost every day, so I will say it is pretty kept well.
I know that you don't have a magic wand and you're working hard on a lot of different initiatives, but I'm going to just theoretically ask you, if you did have that little magic wand and there were maybe a few things that you could just wave it and change about downtown, what those things might be.
Ooh, where does the list start and where does it end? I think really for me, one thing is I would just like to see the historic buildings and the districts that we live in to get a new uplift. They don't need to be redone. The architecture is great, but they just need a little washing.
Which one? Like, what do you?
So
you mean city-owned buildings?
Yeah. So not city-owned buildings, like the old arcade building.
Okay.
And stuff like that. And some of it is starting to get some of that, right? But if I had a magic wand and it could be done tomorrow, we would re-facade all the businesses downtown. We
Like a
would,
universal look?
universal look, straight downtown. We would add.
I thought I read about some money coming in for something like that from Catherine Clark, Congressman.
So we did write an earmark letter. You know, unfortunately, it didn't happen around this budget cycle. But that doesn't mean
Maybe
we
next
can't.
time.
But again,
Anyway,
we can't.
keep waving that
can't
one. Tell
ask.
me what else.
And then I'd say, you know, some pollinators and more just like plant life downtown that creates walkability, that makes it feel more aesthetically pleasing, that makes me want to go out there. And more plant life creates a more calm sense and is more soothing, which helps people with their mental health and everything like that. And getting those trailways with CSX and to Chris Walsh and Bruce Freeman and the connectivity from Holliston to the Eastern Greenway. And if I could get those trailways, the connectivity straight to downtown Framingham, I think those are like my top 3 asks right away. And then everything else, I think, comes into play with all of that, with more foot traffic, more walkability, with the businesses thriving and everything. If you get one universal look aesthetically and everything gets a nice new facelift, and not facelift in like redoing the buildings, but just a new wash up and cleaning up some of the stuff down there. The planters to add more plant life, and then the walkability and access points to connect cross-community intersections for access.
Sounds good. Sounds really good. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. And thank you so much for being here. As time goes on and you take on more initiatives, please come back and give us another update.
I will. Thank you again for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Special thanks to Reyad Shah, Executive Director of Downtown Framingham Inc., for taking the time to be here today. And if you'd like to volunteer or contribute or even just learn more about Downtown Framingham Inc., go to the website, downtownframingham.org, and you'll find all the links to volunteering, donating, etc. Joining me after this short break is James Snyder. He's the director of Framingham's Parks and Recreation and Cultural Affairs Division. Stay tuned. We will be right back.
When it comes to making plans, you are the best. What about those barbecues you plan in detail for your family? Or your daughter's first costume party? It was out of this world. The same way you plan each detail for those moments, start planning to protect you and your loved ones from a natural disaster. Sign up for local weather and emergency alerts. Prepare an emergency kit and make a family communications plan. Protecting your family is the best plan you can make.
Hi, I'm Smokey Bear, and I'm an assistant to help you prevent wildfires.
Dude, I've got this. I've been camping since I was 5 years old.
But I am a camping influencer.
You know what? I'll bet you $5. Okay. Assistant Smokey, what is the best way to put out a campfire?
To put out a campfire, drown with water, stir, drown again. Then make sure the fire is out cold by feeling with the back of your hand.
Wait, really?
I'll take the $5.
The Framingham Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Division operates over 200 youth, adult, and family arts and athletic programs on 62 public athletic fields. Then there's a skating rink, a skate park, a dog park, 3 beaches, a center for adults over 55, walking trails, conservation land, and so many services that enhance the quality of life in Framingham. And all of that falls under the leadership of James Snyder, who is joining me today as the busy season for outdoor recreation gets underway. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here, Jim. It's not your first time. Happy to have you back.
Thank you for having me.
You've got, just listening to that list is overwhelming of all the things that fall under your division. There's a lot there. And when you first started as the director, which was probably now about 7 years ago?
2016.
Yeah. So you had a staff then of about 40 year-round and maybe a budget somewhere around $4 million a year. How has that changed since 2016?
So we've gone through many changes. COVID was an interesting point in time where we were starting to build the department up a little bit. During COVID, we did have to have some reductions, mostly in part-time staff, not in full-time staff. So looking, towards the future, we are looking to increase services to 7 days a week. We're finding that the community is looking for park cleanup, trash cleanup, the more fields that we bring online, the weekend usage, cultural events on the weekends. So we are looking to expand our staff to 7 days a week, roughly about 10 hours, 12 hours a day. So that's where we're looking to go in the future, and we'll be asking for employees as we expand our services.
Are you still at 40 year round, or have you grown?
Approximately. No, we haven't really added any new
I know you said you
full-time
cut back.
staff.
I was just wondering what you netted out. Mhm.
Yeah. So we look at it, in terms of FTEs.
Full-time equivalents, yeah.
Full-time equivalents, and we did have a reduction in the full-time equivalents. Fortunately, no full-time staff had suffered any, loss in their job or anything. So we did have one person retire, which we then didn't replace. But so we are looking to build, again, that force kind of back up, especially in the Parks Department.
Well, have you taken on new parks and new projects that you are managing since then that, obviously adds to your need for more year-round staff?
Yeah, in the past 5 years, since I became director, we had the dog park come online and the skate park come online. We did a pathway over at Farm Pond. We also had the Barry Bograd Memorial Fields, which we redid, and several other projects. The 150 Irving Street Pocket Park, the Veterans Park. Those two that I just mentioned last were ones that we actually did a little bit of fundraising for, or had a group either fill out a grant or do a grant, or a significant amount of fundraising. So it was no impact to the Framingham tax base. Again, going through COVID, we had to look at some creative ways to get some projects done.
Sure.
When the funding wasn't necessarily there.
What do you think your budget asks going forward? What do you think your budget will be around?
In terms of the amount, it's just under $5 million for the whole division, which really is about 1.5% of the overall Framingham budget, which we think, and we've heard ever since town meeting, it's the best deal in town, really, for the amount of money
it has
that they
such a
invest.
big impact on so many people and the quality of life in the community, just because it accommodates so many different interests and needs. You mentioned a few of them. I'm going to run down a list. Feel free to elaborate on any of them. I know that when you first came on board, one of the things that you were excited about was seeing some improvement at Mary Dennison Park.
Yes.
How about that?
So that is a project that's been going since about 2014. That's when the contamination was first discovered, and then we filed with DEP at that point.
Mary Dennison Park is where?
It's on
Not
off
everyone
of
knows.
Beaver Street, so in the southern part of town, over off of Waverly and Beaver Street.
So it was contaminated, and that kind of closed. That kind of set it back. Any progress you had to work on with the Department of Environmental Protection?
Yeah, the DEP was definitely involved, but we also were working with a Fortune 100 company, an Avery Dennison Corporation. So this is a huge corporation, still in business today. They create, the foil paper products and things. So this is a company that we've had to work with.
Because they were involved in the contamination.
Exactly. So it was a shared dump between the city and Avery Dennison. Their manufacturing operations were right there, and the city also contributed to the dump over time. So we've been looking at this as a 50-50 split up to this point. And it's a three-pronged kind of project. So we have remediation of the soil to get rid of any contaminated soil, or majority of the contaminated soil. The rest of it will be put under a cap and sealed off. And then we have some utility work. So while we're in there, there's some pipes that are roughly 100 years old, sewer pipes and things that we'll reline or replace as necessary.
It's a big project.
While things are daylighted. So, we'll go ahead and do that. And then on top will be a beautiful new park with about 10 or 11 new amenities, everything from basketball courts to a splash pad to...
When's that going to be done?
We are looking to put that out to bid hopefully this summer. It's going to be about a 24-month construction window. There's a lot of phasing to the project, a lot of movement of soils, stabilization of soils.
What do you think the cost will end up being?
Right now, it's about a $30 million project altogether.
And that's split or?
Not entirely. I can't get into the details of the settlement, but Avery Dennison Corporation has been a wonderful partner in the settlement, and I think we're going to strike an agreement that works for everybody.
Great. I know that was on your wish list when you first came into this position.
Yes.
So just wanted to make sure that it was still on track, because it meant a lot. What about things like, you mentioned the dog park, you mentioned the skate park. I mean, not every community has those amenities. You know, you've got the dog park right next door to the skate park. How is that going, and how is that to manage?
So admittedly, you know, it's funny, the skate park we were initially nervous about. We didn't know if it would get vandalized. We didn't know the kind of, you know, we knew the skaters because we had done a lot of community outreach and listened to the skaters on what they wanted in a park. But not everyone knew the skaters as well as we did. So we didn't know what to expect, or the community didn't know what to expect. Turns out they've been wonderful. They're very respectful of the property, very respectful of the grounds. It's part of Long's Pond on Dudley Road. And it's been a nice compliment. Again, when we had the dog park that we built in close proximity to the skate park, we were nervous about skaters and dogs and people going by and how that would work. But it's been surprisingly good.
Good.
There really has been no major problems at the skate park or the dog park.
The dogs and the
yeah.
skaters are getting along.
Everyone's getting
side by
along
side.
in the playground, yes.
So you mentioned Dudley Road, obviously, because that's where they're located. But you've got a whole stretch of recreational activity right there on Dudley Road. Does that have a name for itself or not?
You know, we loosely call it kind of the recreation corridor. It's kind of like the central park of Framingham, between Cushing Park, which offers passive walking and recreation. There's a playground there. Farm Pond Park, which is right on Farm Pond, which is a beautiful kind of a passive park, nice trails. That connects to the Aqueduct Trail, which then connects up to Winter Street and some other trails. So I know, you know, since we built it, we've gotten tremendous use. There's new apartment complexes that are nearby. People are enjoying the experience of having a park right outside of their door, having a dog park where they can take their dogs. So it's been a win, I think, for everyone.
Wonderful.
And we're not done.
You're
We're
not
looking
done?
at the Chris Walsh Trail too. So,
Where exactly is that going to be?
so Chris Walsh was a proponent of not just environmental efforts, but also the linear trails or the aqueduct trails, which we call them. Which
Sure,
is
you got the MWRA to open them up for walking, right?
Exactly. So through the 8M permit, Bob Marusi started this actually a while back. We've been opening
Former
certain
director
sections.
of Parks.
Former
and
director.
Recreation.
Yeah. We have been opening up certain sections. Right now, we're looking to try to work with MWRA to get around the gatehouse and working.
It's fenced off right now.
It's fenced off, and we also are trying to work with CSX to figure out how to get over the tracks.
Right.
So those are the two really tricky parts of it, but we've broken that up into phases. Catherine Clark's office has been wonderful in terms of funding portions of the project, so we will get going on that probably this summer.
How
we
will
are
that
finishing
piece-
up with design.
How will that piece of land that actually, and that's what you're talking about, you're going to redesign that land, that walk that goes across Farm Pond?
Right. So basically what we're doing is putting a walkway on top of the aqueduct, which is permissible through the MWRA. And that connection from downtown to Farm Pond and then Farm Pond all the way up to Winter Street. We hope to make that connection all the way to the Bruce Freeman Trail via some ways. So yeah, the interconnectivity of trails has really been a major part of this project and other projects.
Yeah, Reyad, who was on right before you today, which talked a lot about the benefit to downtown of that interconnectivity. So hearing it from you as well just really emphasizes that, you know, everyone's recognizing that that's really important for quality of life, for economics, everything.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
So
So you, on top of all of that, there's been a lot of talk about, we want splash pads, we want our beaches open, we need our athletic fields. Let's talk about those.
Sure. So the mayor is on board and has heard from the public loud and clear that one of the first things he did when he came on board was to open up the beaches, make them free for everybody. We also
3 beaches,
three beaches.
all
We have
at lakes.
Saxonville, yep, beach, and then Washacum Beach, and then Learned's Pond. So 1 pond and 2 lakes. Yep. So it's been going well. You know, admittedly, coming out of COVID again, we did limit it to residents only, and then we also made it free to the public, removing basically all barriers to attend. So we invite the public, certainly the residents of Framingham, to attend all the beaches. Guards, admittedly, have been tricky the last couple of years. We have noticed a reduction in the amount of applicants for lifeguards, beach attendants, even frontline laborers, like with the Parks Department. All those applications, unfortunately, are pretty low this year. And we've done our best to staff the beaches when we have staff. But there will be times, admittedly, where we're not staffed, but we will be checking up on it with maintenance, making sure the trash is picked up, goose poop, and everything else.
The goose poop is a big problem, especially when you put out the things at the ponds and the beaches for the floating docks.
Yes, so we actually removed the floating docks because we found that was a place for birds and the geese and the ducks and everything to kind of congregate, and then they just made a mess of the water. So we did take those docks actually out the past couple of years, which has been helpful. The mayor has also wanted, as one of his missions, to improve water quality, especially at Washacom. There was a number of years where it was closed just for poor water quality, never mind anything else. So having a combination of the cutout coyotes that are out there, or we have some fencing to kind of direct them. We have some other things, some string lines and things to kind of detour the amount of goose activity over there. And that's helped. We've also worked with the health department to look at septic systems and get some public information out there about how to manage your septic system. To the rest of the neighborhoods, reminding people that whatever goes into the drain ends up in the lake. So really important to know what you're putting on your lawn or what you're putting in those sewer systems, because the stormwater will find its way to the lake.
What do you tell people not to put on their lawns so that they don't go in the drains?
Anything, chemical related, anything, for promoting growth of grass will promote growth of algae in the pond if it finds its way, in there. Any of the, if someone dumps oils or just any unnatural thing, down the drain, it's going to cause a problem down the line.
It's good to know. Obviously, the education process, is something that's needed because there's turnover in people. It's not the same people in all the locations where they could be fertilizing, et cetera. So constant education probably makes a difference. Is there an effort to do that?
Yeah, there's 2 neighborhood groups which have been fantastic. There is a Washacom kind of a lake group, Lake Association, and then there's more specifically a Tripoli Coburnville group that also is concerned kind of with that area. And another one, they partnered up with Ashland as well. So they do meet and discuss things quite frequently. Treatments that we do there for weed control, we try to do that as a coordinated effort. They have also helped with this PSA campaign to get the word out about, basically what happens with septic systems, how to manage those, how to manage the sewers, and other things. So it's been a combination of things that have worked out really well. We're also working with the DPW to add a rain garden and a kind of a storm surge protector that'll help filter the water before it gets to the pond. So we're trying to hit it from a bunch of different angles.
Yeah, because when the ponds usually close, it's usually when the summer gets the hottest. Ironically,
August is the tough month
because of the water quality, and that's when people really are dying to get into the water and cool off. So hopefully we'll see some improvement in that area over time. It's a lot to manage for sure, and then you've got obviously a lot going on at Bowditch all the time. Big property, lots of tennis courts. Are you adding any pickleball anywhere? That's becoming very popular.
It is. Actually, we did put 3 pickleball courts over at the courts at Butterworth Park. So that has kind of become the pickleball courts. We do have 1 tennis court still there. And then when we finish up at Winch Park, a majority of them will be tennis, but we'll probably add a couple of pickleball lines overlay on one of the courts. So that it can be played up there. The desire has been to create a more specific pickleball complex just for pickleball.
It's growing.
So it is growing.
Very, very fast. So hopefully, you just had a groundbreaking at Winch, right?
We did.
What was that all for?
So this is for our post-tension concrete courts, which is the newest technology in tennis courts. Previously, it would be pavement, and we'd find, it would crack and heave over the years. Water would get in there. We'd have to patch it and replace it. This is actually a series of interconnected wires or tension rods that are in the concrete, which help to hold it together. So it doesn't have all of these issues and has a longer shelf life, 20 to 25 years versus 10 to 15.
That sounds expensive.
So it's a expensive but a worthwhile investment. You're doing the project once, not twice. and the result will be superior than just an asphalt pavement.
Is that being done at the courts at the high school also?
Those are the high school courts.
I mean, the Winch Street courts are the high school.
So we share that. Interestingly, 3 of the courts actually belong to the schools and are on our school property, and 3 of the courts are on Parks and Recreation property or Winch Park. But because we manage a lot of the capital projects when it comes to parks with the schools, we're managing this project, and the schools are certainly supporting this effort.
And then on top of all of that, you have a lot of programs.
Yes. Yep.
A lot of programs, camp programs, classes, all kinds of things. Where do people find out about all the programs? And I mean, obviously there's so many that people may not even know about. Obviously the swimming program for kids has been very popular for many, many years. There's usually a rush to people to get on the phone to get their kids registered in those swimming programs. But how do people find out about the vast array of programs that you offer?
Sure. We've been thrown a few curveballs with the swimming program in that the Keep Pool, unfortunately, was not available this year. So we had to make some arrangements over in Sudbury. So we still are offering a pool program, but over in Sudbury for now until Framingham figures
Sudbury?
out. It's at the athletic complex over in Sudbury. Yeah, they have a bubble that's over a pool over there. But where you can get a majority of your information is this guide right here, which is our Parks and Recreation 2023 guide. All this information can be found online as well. But this is our program and summer guide that we bring to a lot of our outdoor events, cultural events where we have booths.
Where can people get a copy of that? That's a really attractive brochure.
So we do hand them out at these events, and then we also have some, if you want to pick one up here at Bowditch, where our administrative offices are.
Okay, the nice
So
brick building at Bowditch Field.
Yes.
In your administrative offices, you've got a supply of those.
Yep, and in this you can find a whole variety of information, from contact information to programming information. We had our egg sighting event not too long ago, which is very popular, and that was a lot of fun.
What were some of the other more recent programs that you had?
We've done a lot with the Blast babysitting course, Lego courses. We offer things for a whole variety of ages. So we have where we have like kind of the mommy and me classes, or make it and take it kind of classes, we call them. With the younger groups, we also have yoga. We have softball, basketball for adults. We actually send Anthony, one of our program supervisors from Recreation, over to the Callahan Center, and he does fitness over at the Callahan Center. So,
wonderful.
Yeah, we really try to work as a team amongst the division and try to support and help each other out. So,
and this is also online, you said, at what website? The city website?
Yeah, if you just Google Framingham Parks and Recreation, it'll bring you right there. We're the first thing that pops up. And same with the Callahan Center. If you look up the Callahan Center in Framingham, you'll get this wonderful guide, which is the Callahan Courier, also filled with a tremendous amount of information, schedules and things like that are coming up. Some new programming or upcoming program for June is Latin and jazz music. There's some political division, songs of the swing era. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I Dissent, elder law presentations, and 8 weeks of Ukraine. So a lot of cultural things, a lot of seminars, a lot of interesting
Can
programming.
anybody participate, or is that you can only participate in those at the Callahan if you're 55 or over?
Generally, it's 55 or over, but I think we don't necessarily turn away anyone. I think if someone showed interest and wanted to get involved, we certainly find a way for them to get involved. One of the other things that is coming up too is the Senior Heroes Awards. So one of the things that the Callahan Center likes to do is honor its senior heroes.
Wonderful.
And so they'll be doing that. Is coming up as well.
Yep. Now there's a new director of elder services.
There is.
And you have a Parks and Recreation supervisor, or
so we have
what is Elaine?
Elaine is the recreation superintendent.
Superintendent.
Right.
So maybe you can just update us a little on what her exact role is, and then we can learn a little bit more about who's heading up Callahan.
Sure. So Parks and Recreation is considered kind of one department on the books, but really it's kind of two separate operations. We have a whole recreation operation with 3 full-time staff, and then we have the whole parks operation with probably about 15 full-time staff, and then we usually have an influx of another 20 people, 10 seasonal and 10 summer. Again, those applications are a little low this year. And unfortunately, as a result, the grass may take a little bit to get to cut. The trash may take an extra day or two to get to. But I assure you the guys are out there as much as they can trying to keep up with all these facilities, especially now that it's spring. All the sports groups are up and running. We have graduation coming up. We have a number of cultural events happening at Bowditch on the weekends. So we're very, very busy.
Pretty busy. Yeah, the recreation all falls under Elaine.
Yes. And then Parks falls under Chris McGinty, who's the park superintendent. So I'm the director of the overall division. And then over at Callahan, we have Randy Ellsworth, who's the new director of Elder Services.
New to that position,
New
but
to
not
that position.
to Callahan.
No, not at all. No, he's been a fixture there for a number of years. He's great with the staff and with the public. He knows, the city council members. He works well with the mayor. So he's really been a great addition to the team over there.
He's a roll up your sleeves kind of guy.
He is. He loves to get right in there. He doesn't mind a hard day's work. And certainly it's been great having him in there, just providing his, really what he wants to kind of his impact on the Callahan Center. So he's starting to develop some of those things, and he certainly has some ideas coming down the road too.
And whether it's recreation or medical or taxes or travel, I mean, Callahan is really providing a vast array, right? And people may not even know about the wide variety of services available to the 55 plus population in Framingham. Is there a direct link on your website also to the services at Callahan?
Yes, yeah, we do. Yep. So if you go to my website, there's a link that will get you over there, or you can go to their website and vice versa. They can send you our way.
So in the 7 years since you've been at the helm of this division in Framingham, you've seen a lot of changes. What are you hopeful for? What are the things near and dear to your heart that you really want to accomplish in the short term now?
What I've seen over the past year, going through, 2 administrations now, a number of city councilors.
A change in government.
A change in government from a town to a city. I think it's time to really look at the priority list in our capital program. We now have new funding sources through the CPA and others. We're getting more and more.
The acronym is not always familiar to everybody, but the Community Preservation Act, which is something voters passed here and is on everyone's tax bill now.
Right.
And it funds new programs.
Right. It's generated, I think, over the past couple of years, upwards of $3 million, something in that range. Now, admittedly, they were new. Everyone was trying to learn what CPA was all about, how it works, who qualifies, what the requirements are. So there was a bit of a learning curve, and some projects were accepted to move forward, and some they wanted us to reevaluate, and maybe we'll bring them back next year. But it's a great funding source. What I think is critical is that we tie those into the capital improvement plan so that we have an idea of all the projects coming down the pike. And also, credit to our CFO, Louise Miller, figuring out the financing of each and every one of those projects.
So you're hoping to get a comprehensive capital plan? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
revisit the whole capital plan?
Yeah, we've had a 20-year capital plan, but over the past few years, there's been some newer priorities. A pool, for one, that's a new priority. A community center is a new priority for the mayor. A larger splash pad, setup is what the mayor is looking for as well. Some of the city councilors they're advocating for their parks, and they're advocating for their for people in their districts. So, certainly, we're looking with fresh eyes at some of those parks. We did a complete assessment back in 2015, and that was part of that 20-year plan too. And that includes not only routine maintenance things, the a lifespan of some of the equipment and when we need to replace it, but also all the park updates. There's new codes that are out now. Sand and wood chips are no longer considered accessible at a playground.
So you need a lot of updates.
So now we need updates with Port in Place, which is more expensive than the other ones. So we are looking to, revisit that program, include some of these more recent priorities that people have suggested, and get people to buy into the 5 to 10 year plan.
Good. Look forward to seeing what else is coming down the road. It sounds like you're not at a loss for projects and ideas. So
Yes.
thank you for sharing them today, and I hope that you'll continue to come back and help keep everyone in Framingham updated.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Special thanks to my guest today, James Snyder, again, Director of the Framingham Parks, Recreation and Cultural Division, and Reyad Shah, Executive Director of Downtown Framingham Inc. And thank you for tuning into the Audrey Hall Show, where you will always learn something new.